Well, it's good to be back for week 2. We have entered, we've been trying to be open, we've been trying to allow ourselves to see and to have new things be revealed. And this week is about lament. And I can say that I know this as a mom who has a child who died, that our culture is terrible at grief and lament. We truly want to just feel it really fast and then move forward. And lament is something that really needs to be practiced when we're talking about unhealthy power that needs to be healed, disrupted, and healed. And so today, as we kind of think about the week ahead, a big piece that I hope we're willing to do is to be people who are willing to lament. And years ago, Mark Charles, who is an amazing resource, and in the back of the book, there are multiple resources. I mentioned one last week, and Mark Charles' book is in the back, also about unsettling truths and centered on the doctrine of discovery. And Mark came to my faith community, the Refuge, a chunk of years ago, 2 different times actually, and really spoke and engaged on this topic. And I will never forget a conversation that I had with him afterwards. And he said, everybody wants to move to action. They want to know, what can I do? And nobody wants to lament. Everybody wants to move to action. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And no one wants to lament. And I really took that in. And I think there's so much wisdom in his words. And I think that's a huge piece of this week, is that already, probably before you even started this book, you're thinking, what can I do right now? What can I do? And I think it's crucial in everything that I do and care about is in action and in practice. And I consider myself, I'm not a Bible scholar by any means, but I really consider myself kind of a practical theologian. And that is just like taking anything theological, spiritual, and applying it practically in regular terms. And that is sometimes missing in some of these conversations. And so for me, really engaging with the practice of lament helps us with action later. And so Jesus is also pretty clear on this in terms of lament and healthy, gut-wrenching feelings. And that includes anger, and it includes churning, and it includes deep passion for things, and deep grief over the reality of what's happening in the world and in culture. And feeling it. And I feel like Jesus really gave us good examples of that. And he also really directly called out people who were harming other people. And so in Matthew 23, those woes to the Pharisees, it is really, really easy to look at the Pharisees and not think that we're them. But the truth is, in all different ways, we always have aspects of those leaders in us. And there is a really, really strong call to action as leaders. And I just want to name this in conversations about power for all of us, is that we're all leaders in different contexts. It's leading our families, it's leading at work, it's leading at school, it's leading in our faith communities, it's leading in structures and systems that we serve in. Leadership, we all have leadership roles. It doesn't matter who we are, even what age we are, we all have a role in leadership. And so when it comes back to lament, I think a huge piece is just allowing ourselves to feel and allowing ourselves to notice how hard it is to feel, and then to name pieces of our own story. And so in this particular week, we really walk through some ways to maybe help us lament a little bit, and starting with just inventory. As I mentioned before, I have been in 12-step recovery for many years, and I love the principles of 12-step recovery in the practice, because it's a lot of people in a circle who you don't know who's who. You don't know who's the business person and who's the person that might live outside and just walked in today. You just don't know, because what you do know is that you're all together in a shared circle trying to heal. And so that principle, I think, is really powerful for us in the conversation related to lament. And there's a fourth and fifth step is making a fearless and searching moral inventory. And then step 5 is about admitting things to God, to ourselves, and to others, and naming the exact nature of our wrongs. And that fourth and fifth step is really a huge piece of really engaging with truth and lamenting over it, and then naming it and saying it. And that's what this week is about. And for some of us, we have been abused by power. And so I want to say that out loud as you're reading. You see yourself in the story. You know you have been on the underside of power, and it hurts. And it hurts. And so again, as we enter in, I hope we can just all do it like in our, read everything and engage with everything through our unique lens. Others of us have abused others with our power in different ways, using our position and our authority to keep people down and not allowing full freedom and full liberation of people that we're in church with and lead within our work teams. And that a lot of us really struggle with an attitude of humility, and it's just easier to self-protect. Humility is very vulnerable. That's why lament and grief is, I think, so pushed away in our society, because we really don't like being vulnerable. And any issues related to disrupting power and really unpacking our place in the story is going to require a lot of vulnerability, and that humility really is our path. And then I think lastly is just really recognizing that so many of us have such good intentions. I have made so many mistakes with a good heart related to power, trying to care for people, trying to stand for people, trying to understand others, and not realizing that some of the ways that I did it really had a negative impact. And so I lament that, but I'm learning, and I'm going to do it again because I'm human. But hopefully the piece of revealing and then honoring it will help us do better. And that attitude of humility will help us kind of continue to complete the cycle in being people who honor and own our impact, and not just focus on ourselves. And while I had good intent, I did not mean to say or do something that harmed somebody on the underside of power. I didn't mean that. Can't you tell? And that kind of desperation is not grounded in health and in learning and in the true place of grief. It really is a way to self-protect. And so as we really make this next shift into continuing to deepen our journey in power, lament is an important practice. And notice how it's hard. Notice where there's resistance. I feel it. I want to say even now, I want to defend that I tried. I was doing it right. That's like my first reaction to some of these things. And that's okay to honor and own. But the next piece is to really take that fearless and searching moral inventory and think, okay, what was that really about? Why do I feel so dedicated to protecting myself? And why can I not be really open to some of the harm that I might have caused unintentionally, and what people might be saying to me that I need to learn from? So as we wrap up, the practice for this week, there's multiple practices at the end of each chapter, but one that really comes to mind today is to really consider a little power inventory. Maybe where you have been harmed by power, and naming that and saying it out loud and writing it down. And then maybe where we have used power and abused others unintentionally or intentionally sometimes, and naming it and saying it and not being afraid to look at it and to allow it to sit and to allow ourselves to lament.